On our mark, set, go, we're going live. I'm going to talk fast. Welcome to Goalie Training Pro TV. This is episode 13. I'm your hostess, Maria. But I am going to talk a little bit quick because I have a meeting downtown that starts in 40 minutes. So I need to be out of here in 20 minutes, and I still have to wash my fork from just eating my lunch. It's been one of those days. So I'm going to, usually I start with a little witty repartee. I'm going to forgo that. But I do want to tell you that I'm going to tell you later about the Aldoa course that I did on the weekend, which is a mobility course, and we're going to touch on it. It's probably what got me thinking about this topic. I'm going to keep it pretty short and sweet today. It's about the shift from static to dynamic stretching. So it's funny because I was talking to somebody, I can't remember who, and they're like, oh, my trainer is not a fan of static stretching, which to me is a little bit like saying, even saying, well, I'm not a fan of French food. Well, it means you don't personally like it, but it doesn't mean that it's bad food. Or, well, I'm not a fan of kettlebells. But what if a kettlebell is exactly the right tool to use? And so the other side of that coin is to say, like, oh, you're a he's a static stretching guy, or, she's a kettlebell girl. And you do see people like that. It's like every single thing is going to use a kettlebell. Or the answer to everything is static stretch it. And it's, it's not so cut and dry like that. So, it's almost like arguing what is the best food. Well, you can't say what is the best food because you're influenced by your personal biases. But, I don't know that you'd find somebody who's like, I only eat French food. So I hope you understand that. I guess a better analogy is, again, like a toolbox. Your toolbox, has hammer and wrenches and screwdrivers. You can't really be like, well, I'm not a fan of the hammer. It's like, well, yeah, but sometimes you just need a hammer, and that's perfect for it rather than trying to beat the crap out of something with the wrench. So there are all these tools, and of course we have a preference for some tools, probably because we feel more competent with them, but it doesn't mean that the tools that we don't like are bad. There's also this, I don't know if you know, can you feel it? I feel it all the time because I live on it. And I'm sure it's in your job too, but there's a pendulum in strength and conditioning and fitness in general, actually, that swings usually quite slowly, but it swings, and you're hanging on for dear life, swinging back and forth, and it goes like this. Oh, long, steady cardio is the best because it builds a base. You need that aerobic base. You need mitochondrial density and the capillarization. It's the best. Then to no. High intensity interval training. Everything should be high intensity interval training. You should never ever do anything slowly. You should not, oh, but wait a second, because sometimes when we do, so this is where we live. And some people live way out here on the pendulum. Some people live way out here on the pendulum. Try to stay here, just try it on. Does it work? Does it help our athletes? Do our athletes get better with fewer injuries? Then we put that in the toolbox. If it's like the shake weight, it's like that not going in our toolbox. So there is a pendulum. Now like 5 years ago, I still sometimes get emails from people like, I saw you bouncing in a stretch and that's terrible. But like 5 years ago, let's say, or 2 or 3 years ago, bouncing was the devil. If you were stretching and bouncing, I don't know what was going to happen to you, something really bad. But now it's come back around to now dynamic stretching is good and static stretching is the devil. So it's hard. And I think one of the reasons that flexibility is really hard is like with a strength protocol, we can do, okay, I'm going to do, I use Cal Dietz triphasic training periodization for our elite players in the summer. I can do that, and I can see what the athlete achieved last year in terms of testing, strength testing, power testing, speed testing, mobility testing. Were they better, worse, or no different? And then we're lucky to have, groups of athletes so we can compare data. As a whole, were our athletes better, worse, or no different? If they are better, then we know, okay, there's something to this. We think it's working because we can very objectively measure it. Flexibility is a little bit hard, and people get arguing about what actually the change is. So people say, well, but you're not changing the muscle length. Okay, am I not? I don't know, because really, if I think of how I would do that, the first thing that pops to mind is like, yeah, you'd have to like cut somebody's quad out, lay it on a measuring tape, measure it, put it back in, do the whatever program, take it out again, measure it, nope, it is not longer, or yes, it is longer, it worked. I suppose there might be a way where you could implant markers in the muscle and then do some kind of a scan. I don't know if it would be a ultrasound or an x-ray or whatever, that would show those markers, would illuminate, and then you could probably measure the resting length of the muscle. Maybe. It sounds like a little bit of effort to find out if it works. So really what, it's like even foam rolling, people would be like, well, it doesn't change the fascia. Okay, maybe it doesn't, but here's what I know. Like when I have people roll a tennis or like lacrosse ball on the bottom of their foot, and you've probably seen me do this a bunch of times, and they forward bend before they do it, and immediately after they do it, they can forward bend further. And I didn't even stretch their hamstrings or their back or anything else that's really involved, just the bottom of their foot. So to me, that's like, okay, there's something to it. I don't know, and I sort of don't so much care. It's like that helped, that improved the mobility. So I think sometimes we get interested in arguing about semantics and, oh, well, how long does that effect last, and things like that. But it's like, if the athletes, so in mobility it's more subjective. We don't really measure. We do deep overhead squat and things like that, movement pattern things, so I guess that is the way we measure it. But on a day-to-day basis, it's really, if the athletes tell me they feel better and they're moving better, and they're not getting hurt, then we're going to keep doing it. So we will static stretch, but we'll also move as we stretch. Again, there's different tools. So sometimes it's like, I don't want to use this static stretch tool. And I used to not static stretch. I probably have been static stretching our athletes for, I'm going to say 8 years or so. And I started because Mike Boyle said to. And so, I have great respect for what Mike does. Mike tries a lot of different things. And I think at the time in particular, he's saying, you know what, we do it and I think it helps. Okay, well then I'm going to try that. Here's what sold me on it and why it's stayed in our program ever since. So we come in, we foam roll, we static stretch, then we do our dynamic warm-up. And before you even think of it, don't even bother typing, oh, but I heard static stretching decreases your power output. Because that was such a blip. And again, the people who actually, like me, who actually read those research papers, not, I heard from somewhere, there was a study that, they did a study looking at vertical jump, and they had somebody static stretch and then right away go test vertical jump. And there was, I can't even remember what it was, a 4% or 6% or, it was something, it was quite small on the vertical jump, decrease in power. Now, if I'm at the Olympics and I'm doing my high jump, I probably am not going to just like static stretch and then go out and do my high jump. So everybody, that's where that is where that seed came from. What people didn't bother to look at is the follow-up research, because those articles are boring. But the follow-up research that showed, oh, actually though, if we do a dynamic warm-up, I'm putting it in a nutshell for you. If we do a dynamic warm-up after that, that decrement even goes away. So that's not an issue. So then Mike said to do it, so he started doing it. I told her, it was the summer, I told her, it was at a Perform Better Summit actually. And so I told our athletes, our hockey strong athletes, hey, we're going to do this for 2 weeks. We're going to see how it goes. If we like it, we're going to keep doing it. If we don't like it, we'll can it. So every day, because they come every day, 4 days a week, every day they'd be like, are we doing that stretch circuit again? Yes, we're doing the stretch circuit again. The next day, we're going to do that stretch circuit thing again? Yes, we're doing it for 2 weeks. If we don't like it, then we can put it away, but we're doing it for 2 weeks. Next day, are we doing this? Yes, we're doing it for 2 weeks, So then the Monday comes around to the second week, and a kid says, and he was probably like a 15-year-old at the time, says, are we doing that stretch thing again? I was like now I'm getting a little bit sour. I'm like, yes, we're doing it for 2 weeks. This is the start of the second week. Like, what about 2 weeks? Do you not understand? And he's like, oh, good. He's like, oh, that's awesome because it feels so good. I was like, wait a second. Did I just have a 15-year-old boy hockey player tell me that they wanted to keep doing this stretching because it felt good? Because they felt good after doing it. It's it. But we also move as we stretch, and you're going to see, and this is an area that I've been looking at a lot, and I don't just Google stretches, and then be like, that looks cool, I'm going to do that. And I like Kelly Starrett too. I think he does some great stuff. I don't agree with everything, so I look at it, how does this apply to my understanding of physiology and anatomy and biomechanics? But I think he did a great job of starting the conversation. So, I've done functional range conditioning with Dr. Andrea Ospina. I've done several anatomy trains courses with Thomas Myers, looking at the anatomy of fascia. Studied the Postural Restoration Institute, PRI work, and the science of it is like mind-blowing, which is why it takes me so long to integrate these things into your programs. But you can see the changes that have come. Those of you who have been with me the last 3 years in particular, you can see the changes, and it's going to be another huge evolution. This Eldoa course was another part of that, creating tension in the muscles and the fascia and even a neural stretching. It looks like voodoo magic, but there's something to it, and again, that will probably be its own little episode. But so we also will move as we stretch, and probably one of the easiest ones is we'll do, our half kneeling groin stretch, but we'll add in a rock back because, our muscles, I was saying in a post this week, like, we stretch our muscles in one position. Our muscles are never in one position, so we can do that to affect a length change under control with a certain posture, but then we also want to take it to, moving through that range. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, I kind of go overall mobility here with my static stretch, but what about when I'm out here? What about when I'm sitting back? What about when I'm rotating my body? Oh, that, even if you just do it yourself, well, that feels a lot different from this. So we'll add in those movements. We'll also generate intrinsic tension, which was my Mobility Monday this week. This is a different example, but, I could also use these muscles in the front of my hip to kind of pull myself into that position. And hey, how's it going? And push myself out of that position, contracting the muscles on the front of my hip and the muscles on the back of my hip. I can be pushing down with my foot, generating tension as I move through that position. So, those are kind of 3 or 4 different ways that we can do one stretch. What's the common thread? What's the bottom line? Because I've got to leave for my meeting in 6 minutes. I could stay and talk about it all day. But what's the common thread? What's the bottom line? Here's the bottom line. Mindless stretching is dead. So just like, oh yeah, and then I was playing Super Mario and blah blah blah, like, yeah, and then I just yeah, and you see it at all levels. You see it in the NHL, you watch guys warm up, it's like, oh my gosh. Stretching is training. So you would not be in the gym, doing like single arm cable press, like, yeah, so anyways, you're like here, you're dialed in, you're strong, you're stable, you're doing your pressing. It's with purpose. That's exactly what you need to do with your stretching. So your stretching is mindful, it's focused, it's purposeful. And just like if your trainer has you doing, or your strength coach has you doing strength exercises, you're like, I have no idea what this is for. You would say, hey, like, what should I be focusing on here? Where should I be feeling this? You do the exact same thing with your flexibility or your mobility training. It's like, okay, and if you don't know what muscle it's for, ask. But, if we're here, it's like, okay, I'm trying to get my adductor. And so, okay, I should be feeling it there. Okay, how, and breathing in through my nose, out through my mouth, focusing on that area, focusing on, if it's a static stretch, focusing on trying to relax it. If it's an active stretch, focusing on trying to use the right muscles to contract that you want to be contracting. So there's your bottom line. Mindless stretching is dead. Stretching is training. And especially for you guys, I would say more than any sport I can think of, you need to realize that. You need to get that, because it will boost your save percentage, but also extend your career. No matter where you are now, no matter what level. If you're an up-and-comer, if you're college trying to get to the NHL, a junior trying to get to pro or college, or adult league, beer league, this will boost your save percentage and extend your career. Not a bad deal, eh? All right, this is Maria from Goalie Training Pro. I'm going to do the dash and go to get to my meeting. You guys have a good one. Cheers.